How's it going, Long Game Podcast? Damon Serafino here with Clay. Clay, how are you doing today?
I'm good. A little bit tired. I think getting allergies a little bit.
Not real.
Yeah.
Just grow out of them.
Just grow out of them. This last week we added on an electric guitar at our church, which is great, but also means that like I had to hang up gobo lights and wash lights, and it's so dusty on our roof. And so whenever I go up there, it's like I know I'm going to get allergies. I know I'm going to breathe in all this dust. And then I also had to like climb underneath the stage and run wiring for this guitar. So it's like I'm not at 100%, but I'll get there. So like bear with me.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question for you.
Yeah. All right.
Actually, no, now I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to tell a story first. Okay.
Okay.
It's you. You're out with a girl. Beautiful 10 out of 10 P31
Shoot.
woman. Okay.
Let's go.
Shorthand for Proverbs 31. I learned that recently, and I'm going to use that one for now on. P31 woman. You buy her vanilla latte, okay, whole milk, half decaf, the whole thing. It's her favorite order.
Dang.
You also get a vanilla latte because you're a vanilla latte guy, which I think is weird. Coffee's bad.
So good though.
So bad. Okay. And total comes out to be like I don't know, $8.75, $9.65, whatever.
It's pretty good.
Flip the iPad around, they walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Are you clicking that 10% button?
I think that as a Christian, I feel like I need to put 10%. Would I do that normally? Probably not. If it was just me, maybe not. But I don't know. I feel like it's just an extra, probably like $1 or $2. Might as well for the first date.
But think about that over a lifetime. That's thousands of dollars. Okay,
that's a good point.
Yeah, gotta
You
think
got
about
me
it.
there.
Long game. Okay, let me give you another
Long game.
Let me give you another example. Okay, took some students out to the movies recently. Okay. There's two outrageous examples. First, they wanted to buy popcorn, so we're gonna buy popcorn, and then they asked to tip for buying popcorn. And you know what it was? By the way, it was self-serve. The popcorn was on a little shelf. You took it and then you brought it to the register. Yeah. And they asked for a tip.
Yeah.
Okay, even more ridiculous. This is why the movies are going down, by the way. AMC, I'm calling them by name. AMC, you're going down.
You called them out.
Yeah.
The biggest movie theater.
They're going down, okay? We're starting our own movie theater called the Long Game Theater.
Please no.
And
I promise we will never do that.
Yeah, we are. We're going to stream our podcast. That's all it's going to be. Buying the tickets. It's at a big iPad, like at McDonald's, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Not a soul around, not one employee around. And they asked for a tip on the movie tickets.
My goodness.
Ridiculous.
My goodness. And it was on the church's card too?
The tickets were, not the popcorn. The popcorn wasn't.
Okay.
The students paid for that.
If it's the tickets and it's on the church's card, I'm probably hitting zero.
It's funny. Actually, you know what's funny? Because it's my budget. I always usually tip on that card.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dang.
Because I don't want to be like the guy who's out with like people always come like, oh, church card, or like, you're not buying alcohol on the church card. Wow. And I'm like, no, you can't. But like, so I always like tip like better on that because like for the kingdom, for someone.
Got it. Leadership of Crossroads Church. If you're listening to this, please don't flame Damon. All right, he's just trying to be a good Christian.
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, the only time I tip 20% minimum when I go out to eat. And I'll tip if like above and beyond if they're like funny, they're good. But if they're trying to like manipulate us, like they're trying to intentionally be over the top, listen, I'm not tip. They get 20% if they're trying to be too much. If they just do their job and they don't talk to us, they get like 25%. Yeah. So that's the rule of thumb of tipping. And we're gonna close the episode because that's all we're gonna talk about today.
Thank you for listening.
I'm just kidding. All right, so today we're talking about more money, but not like budgeting or personal finance. But we're gonna talk about one category, which is tithing and generosity. Clay, why are we talking about this today?
Yeah. I feel like this is such an important topic. I believe that I believe that like God, he holds all wealth. He has everything. And I believe that God, he doesn't need your money. He doesn't want anything from you, but he wants something for you. I don't know. I've had like certain seasons where I'm just feeding my flesh over and over again. I'm selfish, but I believe that tithing, it feeds your spirit. And we're going to make sure, like, we're not going to tell you, like, do we tithe? Or we're not trying to, like, I don't know, shine a light on ourselves and be like, we're so holy, we tithe.
I actually tithe 90% of my paycheck.
You tithe 90%? You give it all to the Lord?
And then 10% goes to the homeless shelter, so.
Okay. Yeah. And then missions, Compassion International.
Yeah, that's where, like, anything extra that comes in, like, Christmas goes to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
of holy over here. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah. So I just, I think our goal is I just want to break it down. Some people think that, only people had to tithe in the Old Testament and we don't really have to tithe in the New Testament. But I just really want to get into the specifics, talk about heart posture, and see, like, for us today, practically, does God want us to tithe?
Okay, so what is tithing and how much like should I be giving and what does any of that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And why should I be giving?
Yeah, so tithe is talked about in the Bible, and it means 10%, 10% of your money. God wants your first fruits, the first part of your money. And some people, they ask, like, should we give off of our net or gross profit?
Great question.
And I would argue that we should tithe off of our gross profit because it's before taxes, it's the first fruit, it's, a big sum of money. I think it takes a little bit more faith to do that. So I would argue, 10% off of your gross.
So how much should a Christian tithe? Like, is 10% like a minimum threshold or like I don't understand that.
Yeah. So I would say that if you've been a Christian for 2, 3, 4+ years, you're no longer an infant in Christ. I believe that like tithing, it's for infants in Christ. And so I think that if you're a teenager, if you're only giving 10%, I think that you need to look at what the gospel says. And the New Testament says, take up your cross and follow Christ. And so, which means like, all of my life belongs to God, not just 10% of my life, all of it. I think that if it's a checked box of like, yeah, I gave 10%, like now God needs to bless me, I think it gets a little bit dicey there. But yeah, God requires full sacrifice to the Lord. And God says, give me your whole paycheck. Give me all of it. Give me every area of your life. And just like the Old Testament says, don't cheat on your wife. And the New Testament says, don't even look at a woman lustfully. Don't even look at another woman lustfully. I believe that in the same way the Old Testament says give 10% and the New Testament says give all that you have to God.
So is there like an inherent blessing behind that? Like, are we just so like it kind of sounds like you're saying that like we're blessed if we tithe, like that since God has said it, saying it, and if we do give, are we even supposed to? First of all, before you even ask it, you said give your whole paycheck. Like, what does that mean? Am I supposed to just like Bible says a tithe, which you're saying is 10%, but then also like give your entire paycheck. Like, what is that about?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't want to get into prosperity gospel too much. And if you don't know what prosperity gospel is, it basically argues that like the evidence of biblical faith is tithing and wealth. And I personally believe that an evidence of biblical faith is tithing and wealth. They put everything into your money. They believe that like, you should give everything you have, and it's going to force God's hand to give you like a nice car, a big house, private jet, material blessings. And I would argue that, we can't force God's hand to bless us. He's going to do that. And so I'm not saying that like as a Christian, we, have to give everything, our absolute paycheck, but I believe that it should hurt a little. Like us giving that dollar amount when we press like pay on our computer, it should hurt just a little bit. And I think that shows like full sacrifice, full giving of your life. And every area of our life, I believe, should be, showing that as well. Like how we speak to others, how we walk in our everyday lives, how we treat people when we go into church. What do you think? What do you think about like tithing and giving your full paycheck? I know that like you were an intern for a year and didn't make anything at all. And I believe that that's a great example of like full sacrifice to the Lord.
Yeah, tithing. I mean, it just sets your heart right. And I think too, like the Lord won't bless your finances if you're not like submitting your first fruits, like you said. Like, back in the Old Testament, like they would grow crops. And so God would say, hey, give the first fruits of your crop. Like, let's say you're a little wheat farmer.
Yeah.
And then you're giving the first part like to God. Like what, and it's like, it's all his. It's not yours. Because he's the one who blessed you with the crop. And so take that same train of logic and apply that to your money. And if you're spending it on yourself or trying to provide for yourself, which it's really easy to do in like America, in Western culture, it's like really, really easy to provide for yourself, to make a lot of money. Because, most people in America, if you make, I don't know, it's something like over like even like $30,000 a year, you're in like the top 1% of wealth in like the world.
Yeah.
Which is insane. And that's like poor to us. Like rich, and like you said, like rich in America is like, I don't know, over like six figures, probably even pushing like $150,000. And that's like still not enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when we like submit that selves to God, it actually brings us it brings us closer into worship to God, and we're like trusting in Him to provide for us, and we're not being gods unto ourselves. You said something just now, like, oh, clicking like pay on like the giving page of like a church. What do you what are your thoughts on like the recurring giving? You can like set up so it just comes out of your paycheck, like not paycheck, but like right out of your bank account
Mm-hmm.
right away. Something I learned too, which is crazy. Like you can actually set it up on your credit card so you can get like cash back on it.
Oh,
Which
really?
yeah, that's like I thought about that. I'm like, no, that just feels like I'm like
It's a little
stealing.
bit risky.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but you
on
can
your
set
credit
up
card.
reoccurring giving like every week for like your 10%, especially if salary.
Mm-hmm.
You know how much you're like gonna get every week or every other week. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think that I'm pretty sure that like at my church, most of the people that give, it's automatic. It's automatic giving through an app called PushPay. And I think that's amazing. I was watching this video and it was Manny Arango and he's breaking down tithing and he has like 3 ways of giving, like I guess it's like levels of giving, I would say. And the first one that he says is systematic. So it's giving a percent to your local church, like giving a certain percentage to mission work. I think of Compassion International, Manna Worldwide, like disaster relief organizations. That's money that's like your personal mission. And I think that that should be given to the church, 10% to the church at the beginning of every month, giving the first fruits of your labor to the church. And then the second one is spontaneous giving. And so that's like, tipping a waiter or waitress that did a great job. Or, I have a couple friends that are missionaries and they asked me to be a part of their newsletters and like give to them. I think that's a great way to spontaneously give. Maybe there's like a police officer or a person in a military outfit at like the restaurant next to you and you're like, man, I'm going to spontaneously pay for their meal. I think that's an amazing way to be spontaneously generous. And then the third one is sacrificial giving. And that's when it hurts to give. Like I said, yeah, when you like press pay now and you're like, man, is this like a wise decision? Should I do this? And I think that like that shows trust in the Lord. It's difficult to, give something that big. I think that that shows a lot of faith. I think that that shows like a heart posture that you're giving everything to the Lord. And so like I would challenge all of our listeners, like, the Lord God doesn't need anything from you. He holds all wealth, but he wants it for you. And I believe that fully putting your trust in the Lord, tithing in every area of your life, like that's going to bless you in so many different ways. And it may not always be like money or material wealth, but I just think about, man, I am so grateful for like the friendships that I have, the Bible study guys that I have. I'm so grateful for my job. It's not my dream job, but it's solid. It's amazing. I love my boss. I love the people that I work with. I think about, man, I just love like worship music and worshiping God, and just it calms me down. It makes me relax. And I believe that those are other ways that God has blessed me because I tithe to him. It's not just material gain.
Yeah. I would want to go back to systematic giving. What do you categorize that? I would say you got to give 10% to whoever feeds you spiritually.
That's good.
So like, I know there's some people like, oh, I've heard people like Gen Z say like, oh, well, I give like my 10% to like my friend who's doing internship or missionary has like my 10%. I'm like, absolutely not. Like you need to, like whoever is feeding you spiritually, you should be giving to a local church. Like I know people say that, but like, I don't know, the Bible, like I think we should really be giving our first fruits to God. Obviously, like if you're giving, great, but I think you should be entrusting your church with your money.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, like God has appointed like shepherds over you, and they're going to make the right decision with the money, whether it's to give it away to missionaries or to do like whatever, like if it's locally or globally, or to hire someone for a new ministry they want to start to pastor a group of people, or whatever like the church decides to allocate the money to. You need to like trust them with it. I know like in Gen Z we don't like trust institutions as much. There's a bunch of studies about that, but like we have to like trust our churches, like your church that you attend every week, with your money, with your 10%. And then from there, if you want to bless a friend who's a missionary, or tip the waiter, whatever you want to do, like you should then be faithful in that and be generous. You kind of mentioned earlier about like a heart posture of generosity, and what do you mean by that? Like I don't know, like by being generous, like beyond 10%. And why should we?
Yeah, well, I think that for a lot of us who have been a Christian for a long time, we've been tithing for years, and it doesn't really require any faith anymore. And so I don't know, I'm always looking out for what's the next thing, what's the next step of faith, what's the next difficult thing that'll make me stronger in my faith. I think about like, other than giving, I'm really excited because I'm thinking about like running a marathon, and I know that's going to be difficult. I know that's going to be extremely challenging, but it's a goal, it's something to run after, something to, strengthen me. Yeah, run after. Yeah. I was thinking about like, man, I want to hike like Pikes Peak this summer. And it's like, I think it's 13 miles in total, like 5,000 or 6,000 feet in elevation gain. It's something that's extremely difficult and something that I don't necessarily want to do, but I know it's going to strengthen me. I know I'm going to grow for it. And in the same way, I think that we should be looking for those things that make us a little bit nervous to do when it comes to giving money, when it comes to tithing. Man, I just think about my family. They really instilled that in me. I just saw growing up my parents, some years they would get paid really well, and some years they wouldn't get paid at all. I was just thinking about like COVID. They sat us down and they talked to us and they were like, we're not getting paid at all this year. So it's like, we're going to have to be a little bit better with our money. We're going to have to budget a little bit more. And, my family, the whole entire time I've grown up, they've talked about like they've given to our churches, they've tithed, they've given their first fruits, they've been generous. I've seen them help out other families. I've seen them give to like organizations, give to like generosity campaigns. And even when we weren't getting paid, like God saw us and God provided. It's crazy. I don't know, like maybe our washing machine broke down, right after we decided we were going to give a big sum of money to like Manna Worldwide or something. And then it seems like we always would get like a random check in the mail from, some organization, and they were like, hey, like you overpaid on your taxes or something, or you overpaid this mission. And God, like through all of that, he was providing. He saw us, he saw that we were giving, and he provided, food, housing, shelter, all of it, like clothes. He provided it all to us just because we were decided that we wanted to like give him that tithe, give him that 10% and over and above that.
Yeah, it's about trusting God as provider, like as Jehovah Jireh. Like he's the one who like, I don't know, like he's the one who like who's Elohim, who goes before us. And like you said, God holds all material wealth. It's all his. He's created all of it. And we're just stewards of a small portion of it. And I think when too we trust God beyond 10%. Like obviously it's baby steps. Like if you don't give, like, hey, like I know some people are like, oh, do 2, 4. No, just 10% is his.
10% is great place to start.
It's a great place to start, and it's a ton of money. That first initial getting over the hump is incredibly difficult, but if you can't do it, like if God can't trust you to give him 10%, he's not going to trust you in anything else. Those who will be faithful in little will be faithful in much. And he will never, I don't believe God will exalt you if your money isn't right. And so that's why it's so important, like for us to surrender, not just when we surrender our entire person, that includes our finances and our like desires to like be kings and queens and like rulers of our own kingdom, because he's calling us to be rulers of his kingdom. And so when our finances are right and everything in our life is in full surrender to God, that's when like God starts to bless us. And that's when the miracles start to break out of, hey, God called us to give $1,000 to this thing, and then your washing machine breaks down and then the Lord provides in another way. But that only happened because like your family had been walking like in step with the Spirit for years upon years upon years. So like when they did those like, that tax mistake that blessed them, like God was in every single mundane moment that allowed the Holy Spirit to move.
Facts, totally, 100%. I think of like one of my favorite passages on tithing. It's 2 Corinthians 9:6, and it says, remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. So I think for some of us, we feel like, man, we have a lot to give, and okay, great, we're going to give a lot and we can give that cheerfully. And some of us, we may not have a lot to give in a certain season, and it's up to us individually to decide like how much do we want to give, and can we do that cheerfully? Are we being generous in that? But I've seen it over and over and over again, God blessing people when they tithe, God giving them what they need, giving them even more than what they need when you tithe.
Yeah, and there's a curse actually when you don't tithe. I think of in the book of Malachi when God says, I believe in chapter 3, like, hey, like put me to the test, won't I pour out like the floodgates of heaven? And like the context behind that, I know like people love that for like a giving verse, but actually the context behind that is Israel is, they're back out of slavery from Babylon and they've been trying to rebuild the wall with Nehemiah and they're trying to rebuild the temple. And Malachi was a prophet of Israel, and there's a famine at the time, and like the priests and the people like weren't like the priests were doing messed up worship things, and then the people they all decided what they do with their own time and wealth. They decided to go build their own homes first and then kind of like and go help out with the rest. They were so focused like in as individuals and not as like a nation and worshiping God. Ultimately, like their idolatry of other things blinded them from giving and from doing other things. And God's like, man, if you just put your trust in me, I was going to bless you so, so much more than you can ever think, ask, or imagine.
Mm.
And obviously, like it was more than just tithing wasn't their problem, or having a generous heart, not just in money, but also in their time, that God doesn't speak for 400 years after that. And then they, experience, they're enslaved by the Greeks, and then they're enslaved. Then they were ultimately again enslaved by the Romans, and they had a little relief in between all that. And I'm not saying like I'm not trying to. It's like I don't want to like assume what the Bible. There's a lot going wrong, but I think if they got like their priorities right with worshiping God and submitted their finances and submitted their time and like I don't know like helped out in their community to rebuild their nation, that a lot would have been taken care of, and that like ultimately like that they were cursed because of that. And so it was kind of like I don't know. Go read it. You gotta go read it yourself and like within its context to get the full picture. But man, like God like wants to bless you when you're doing things for him. It's kind of like is it Proverbs when it says like, oh, like the Lord will give you the desires of your heart, but like the verse or two before it is like aligning your like will to God's, and when you align your will to God's, then he will like give you everything you want. And so I think for a lot of us when it comes to tithing or our finances, like, oh man, we want a house and we want like that new car, but it's like, man, that really isn't God's desire for you, is to get a house and a car. His desire for you is to live on purpose for him. And maybe that becomes a blessing from that. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. And so like, I don't know, like I don't own a house right now. And like, I don't know, like I feel like I've been really faithful with my finances to God, and I haven't been blessed in that way, but doesn't mean I don't deserve anything, right? Like the classic cliche, oh, the only thing you deserve is hell.
Yeah.
But like honestly, like I don't deserve that blessing, and that's just like a thing of comfort. And so I think with our money that all of us can be a little more uncomfortable, like you said, doing like the right hard with our money. And through that, there will be blessing, but we don't tithe to become blessed. We tithe and our heart changes, and our heart changing and being surrendered to God's will. That is the blessing, and anything else is just extra. It's like candy on top.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who has never tithed before? This is overwhelming. Maybe they're a new Christian. Man, they're just like, it's really difficult for them right now to make ends meet. What would you say to that person?
Man, it's difficult, and I emphasize I said it wrong and sympathize, you know what I meant, because I've been there. Like you said, like I didn't make money for that year as an intern, really just trusting on the will. But God always provides. Like if you tithe and you do things God's way, like you reap what you sow, like you read in that verse. That's just the way God designed this earth. And like if you reap into God's kingdom, you will sow. But it's like, what would you rather, like do things in your own strength and fail, or would you rather do things God's way and like fail in human terms, but like you're successful in the way of God's kingdom and like you're more blessed? I think of, man, the widow who gave her two copper coins in the Bible.
Yeah, 2 silver.
That she had two copper coins, and what she decided to do is just give it all to the temple when there was like Pharisees are making so much money and they were giving their 10%. But Jesus said, no, that widow is going to be more blessed than anyone else because she gave 100%. But I think of my own life. I remember when I learned about, I think I was been a Christian for maybe about like 5 or 6 months. And I'm like, wait, tithing. Oh my gosh. And so I had this money that I've been making, and I really felt like God called me to like give my 10% of it. And it was a lot. Like, I mean, as someone in high school, it was like a lot of money. I think it was like, I'm not going to say how much, but it was a lot of money for me at the time as someone who like really was trying to save for a car. And I had to give away this big chunk of money that I felt like the Holy Spirit calling me to give. And in that moment, I gave it, and it hurt. It was painful. I cried because it was genuinely that painful. But if you fast forward the next 2 years when I decided to go unpaid, like God provided everything. And someone wrote me a $5,000 check.
It's crazy.
And which is crazy. And and that was an extra, like I have met all my giving meet or my fundraising meets, and someone gave me an extra $5,000. And then I had this like freak accident at like 2 miles an hour, and like my transmission cracked. And like the bill was $5,000 like 7 months later.
Dang.
And I'm not saying like I didn't benefit from that money, because my car was being used for God's kingdom and his will. And that money wasn't for me. It was for him. Someone gave that money as a sacrifice to God, and I used that money as a sacrifice to God. But it's because years before I aligned myself to the will of God and surrendered finances to his will. And from that, when I go and do his work, he takes care of everything else. And it does take faith. It does take trust in God. And it is really, really difficult. But when you do it, it's not the financial blessing isn't the point. It's not about the money. It's about the closeness and nearness you feel with Jesus.
Yeah. I had a friend who I really looked up to him. He was a Bible study leader that, and he even mentored me a bit, but he would drive this like janky truck. He just had this janky truck, but I knew he had money to buy a new car. And so I asked him, I was like, don't you have like money to buy a new car? Wouldn't you buy like something nicer? And he's like, I could, but this truck, it's reliable. It gets me from point A to point B. And every time I start it up, I get closer to God, because I'm like, man, like, please start up, God, please start up. He's fully like, he's reliant on the Lord. And, I think that some of us, like, it's difficult to budget. It's difficult to want to steward our money extremely well, but also want to tithe. And I feel like there's a balance between that. And, I really want to be known as someone who stewards their money well, but also gives so quickly to someone in need. And that takes budgeting, that takes, highly budgeting for some of us. That takes, not buying things off of impulse. We've talked about like lottery tickets and how it's like tax on the poor before.
But think about it. You could double your money in 10 hands to a millionaire.
Yeah.
$10 to $1 million in 10 hands of blackjack. Come on.
That's how they get you.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah. But I think that there's so much stuff that comes up, that you could buy like on impulse all the time. Like I'm probably going to go home today and be like, man, I really want to buy this new, like, I don't know, these new weights or like this pull-up bar or whatever. But it's like, no, like budgeting heavily, it requires you to say no to some things that like may not be evil, but it's going to require you to say like no to some things so that you can say yes to other things.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Because what is it? Like every yes is 1,000 no's. So if you buy that thing, what if God wanted you to bless someone down, like, oh, I can't. And obviously too, it's not like a guilt trip, right? Like we don't like, I love actually being able to talk about tithing freely, because I feel like in the church and like preaching and like, guys, you need to tithe more. And it's like,
I feel like the church is asking for my money.
And of course too, it's like the church is what pays my salary. And I'm just like, I'm really grateful. But too, like, I don't know, like there's people that are like giving it all, and like that money, like you in the corporate world gets to like bless other people, and like, I don't know, it's like what helps make ends meet for other people. And so it's just like that sacrifice isn't just for like one person, but that could have so much kingdom impact when we start living like not just a 10% lifestyle, a tithing lifestyle, but like an offering lifestyle, a generous lifestyle, and that like everything we do flows out of generosity. But then too, like I think again, like the blessing is like bitterness begins to cease, selfishness begins to cease. Like you have more self-control, and because you're doing things God's way and you're being formed like closer into the image of Jesus.
Facts. All right. Anything else you want to share?
No.
We good? Cool. I'll just say this, like overall, like God, his end goal is to change your hearts from selfishness to a heart of generosity. He doesn't need anything from you, but he does want something for you. And so whatever it is, whether you've never been tithing before or you've been tithing for a really long time and you want to give more and, get to another, maybe it's like, you want to be more spontaneous in giving. Maybe you want to be more sacrificial in giving. I would say no matter what, just pray to God and ask him, like, what do you want from me? I want to build faith. I want to get closer to you. How much money do you want me to give? Do you want me to start budgeting? Do you want me to start being more spontaneous in my giving? Whatever it may be, that's between you and the Lord. That's not something that like me and Damon can choose for you. It's for you individually. And so I would say just like listen to God, see what he wants you to do it, and I believe there's going to be amazing blessings from it. But that's all. Thank you guys so much for listening. Give us a 5-star review on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and we'll see you next week.
See you.